A very, very warm welcome to all of you. It has been a very hot day, and it's great to see all of you here, despite of all the other things you could be doing. This evening has been prepared with a lot of care and engagement from many, many people, and we are very happy that it's happening now. We have wonderful guests and a wonderful moderator and a very important topic. Bridges over troubled waters and bringing together people from science and leadership and spirituality. So we look from very different perspectives on what's going on in the world and how can we build bridges. My name is Caroline Fraude, and I just would like to mention that this evening has been organized by three organizations. It's the Brahma Kumaris, and we will hear more about the Brahma Kumaris later because one of our speakers is heading the organization together with another team. And then we have the Research Institute for Sustainability here in Potsdam, and our other speaker, Mark Lawrence, we will hear more about the Research Institute later because we have him here. And the Spirit of Humanity Forum is also our third partner. And the Spirit of Humanity Forum, I just want to say, is hosted by the city of Reykjavik in Iceland, and is doing wonderful retreats and forums for leaders from different backgrounds to help each other look at the world and look for solutions in a new way. We are here for the first time in Boom, the wonderful house here, and we want to thank Boom as a very, very supportive place, allowed us to be here, helped us in many, many ways. And and I don't want to say much more. Rather than before we start and before I hand over to our wonderful moderator, I would like to ask you a question, because before we go into a consumer mode maybe and hear what others are saying, I would like you to also think about your connection to this evening. So since we have representatives of science and leadership and spirituality, would like you to think about which of the three is the area where you feel most connected to, and what is your relationship to the other two. And just take a moment and think about it, and then turn to the partner next to you and share for a minute or two. Thank you. And if there's no one sitting next to you, you will find someone who is maybe sitting behind you. It's beautiful to see you all lively engaged with each other. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with the partner next to you. I will now share a bit more about the Brahma Kumaris and then a few housekeeping information, and then we start the evening. So the Brahma Kumaris is a worldwide spiritual movement dedicated to personal transformation and world renewal. It has been founded in India in 1937 and since then spread over 110 countries. And in all the countries, there has been an excessive impact as an international NGO. And the main focus is on actually individuals' personal transformation whilst we engage in social areas. And just want to mention also that we invite you to put your mobile phone on mute, and when the house is on fire or you hear something going on, an alarm, we just gather outside. And that's it. And I would like to invite Philippa Blackham to come on stage, our moderator for tonight. Philippa worked for the BBC for 20 years as a broadcaster and a documentary maker. She also meditated for many, many years with the Brahma Kumaris. Thank you, Philippa, for coming and moderating this evening.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And what a pleasure it is to be here with all of you on this beautiful summer's day in Berlin. I've only been here for a day, but it's very chilled and relaxed. I'm picking up the energy and really enjoying it. So yes, my name is Philippa, and it's an honor to be your moderator for this evening. And before I launch us into our topic, I thought I can't come to Berlin and not share with you a story that has gone down in my family annals that connects my family to Berlin. So let me just briefly tell you that story. There was a time back in the 80s when my mother suddenly decided that we were all going to start eating healthy foods. We went almost literally overnight from white bread, sliced white bread, to healthy brown bread, from white rice to healthy brown rice, from sugary breakfast cereal to this strange thing called muesli, or if you're very good, toasted muesli, which was called granola. It was all new to us. But for the purposes of this story, the most significant change was from white refined sugar to healthy brown muscovado sugar, which often clumped together in big lumps, so much so that you would have to use a knife to break it into small pieces so that you could put it on your breakfast cereal. So what has this got to do with Berlin? Well, my mother happened to be in Berlin 2 days after the fall of the Berlin Wall, just by chance. And she was really carried away with the energy and the feeling of unity and oneness and togetherness. And she watched people as they brought the wall down, and she decided to bring back a memento of this historic moment. So she filled a bag with some of the rocks and stones and the dust that had fallen from the Berlin Wall, and she carried it back to the UK. And she arrived quite late at night. So she put her memory of the Berlin Wall in a bowl on the breakfast table with the intention of sharing with us all the following day what this was. But she had a bit of a lie-in because it was a late flight that she got back. And my dad got up early for his breakfast in order to go to work, and he came down and he put his muesli in a bowl, and then he reached out for what he believed to be sugar and took a spoon and put it on his breakfast cereal and started eating. And I think it was when one of his teeth nearly fell out that he realized it wasn't sugar at all. And my mum then got up and told us what it actually was. And we were all able to go to school that day and tell the news that our dad had eaten the Berlin Wall. It's a story. So Berlin has a place in my family's heart and in my family's history. But of course, to tonight's topic, and it was Martin Luther King Jr. who said, let's build walls, let's build bridges, not walls. So how do we build bridges over the many troubled waters in our lives? Bridges between the outer world and our inner world. Bridges between ourselves and society and the many different groups that are so often pitted against each other. And how do we build bridges between ourselves and nature? A bridge between our desire for environmental change and the change that our leaders are able or willing to deliver. Where do we look for the answers to all these questions, for solutions to all these problems? Can science deliver the bridge over troubled waters? Can our leaders rise to the challenge and make a difference? Or are our problems now soul-sized or even God-sized, requiring a shift in human consciousness and a spiritual change in our thinking, feeling, and doing? Well, these are some of the questions that we're going to be pondering this evening. And I'd like to welcome to the stage our panelists who are going to be sharing in a dialogue on this very important topic to see where are we now, where are we going, and how are we going to get there. So please put your hands together and welcome our panelists to the stage. So I'm going to introduce them one at a time, and then they're each going to share a few thoughts with you on the topic. And then there'll be a chance for you to just share in twos again your impression from the little introduction talk that each of our speakers have given. So I'm going to begin with Sister Jayanti, and she is the additional administrative head of the Brahma Kumaris, which is the largest spiritual organization in the world for men and women to be led by women. And since the age of 19, Sister Jayanti has dedicated herself to the spiritual life, not only her own spiritual journey, but uplifting and inspiring many millions of people around the world. She is the European director as well of the Brahma Kumaris, based in India and at the International Coordinating Office in London. And she is the representative to the UN in Geneva and the Brahma Kumaris is a non-governmental organization with the United Nations, and it has consultative status with ESOC, which is the Economic and Social Council, and we've had a permanent office in New York since 1980. Sister Jayanti is the author of more than a dozen books on meditation and spirituality. And if I was to have one sentence or one phrase to capture Sister Jayanti's essence, I would say it would be this: when I change, others will change. When enough others change, when we reach that critical mass, the world will change. So, Sister Jayanti, what are the troubled waters that you see, and what is the spiritual perspective that you bring to this conversation?
Thank you, Philippa, for a very warm introduction. And it's a joy to be here with everyone. And I'd like to begin with a greeting of peace. Om Shanti. Om means I am, and Shanti means peace. And if there's one word that can become a bridge, it is Om Shanti. Truly, because when I am peaceful, then I begin to see connections and solutions instead of problems and divisions and conflict. One of the big things of today's world is, and I've seen it just in my own lifetime, the change in terms of spiritual and human values, where somebody's word used to be their bond. Today it's reached the point where you can even sign a contract, but you have to see with a magnifying glass what the terms and conditions are, and you might still get tripped up. And so just that one example illustrates how far we've moved away from the subject of trust in each other, respect for each other, and even maybe love for each other. And I see that the underlying factor of the loss of values in our lives has created the current situation in which we are seeing breakdown in so many, many different areas. And you know more about it than I do. Where do I find values? I don't find them in my hands and my feet. I find them somewhere deep inside. And so I feel that the first step has to be that we go on that inner journey and come to the awareness of the inner being so that I can again connect with the original qualities that actually are there within me. The paradox is that we spend a lot of money chasing things outside, maybe thinking if I go away, far away, away from the rest of the world, to a desert island, maybe I'll find happiness there. And I get bitten by flies and insects and bugs, and I don't get the food I like, and I come running back home, and having spent a lot of money and very far away from the happiness that I wanted. We seek love, we seek peace, and we're chasing a shadow outside because it isn't outside, it's there within the inner being. And when I begin to understand this, and I go on that inner journey and catch a glimpse of the goodness that lies within, I think that is the start of creating, first of all, a bridge to my inner world. And when I can come to that awareness of who I truly am, away from the things of race and gender and nationality and religion and position and all the things that trap us outside, and really get to know who I am within and discover the beauty of the soul, discover the goodness that is my own original natural state, I think we can create a very beautiful world together. And so spirituality isn't something that's a mystery. Spirituality isn't something that's far away. It's not something to come to when I'm old and grey. If I am, that's fine. But if I'm not, at whatever stage of life it is I may be, spirituality is really just getting to know myself so that I can deeply connect with that goodness. And when I can do that, then I can start seeing how to create relationships of value. Because so often today, we prize the outcome in terms of work and external results rather than the value of human beings and relationships with others. Even with having many, many friends on social media, my real friends are the ones I know personally, face to face, who I can meet and connect with, and perhaps we don't have many of those. But when I am a friend to myself, then I can be a friend to others and make many friends. And I can have a support system that can carry me through all the challenging times that we're passing through. And I think things maybe are going to take a little bit of a dip before they begin to blossom and flourish. And so I need my friends, but I need to have friends I can love and trust. But I need to love and trust myself first. Then I can love and trust others. And when that happens, then yes, together we can do something amazing for the world. And each one will bring their own particular talents and qualities. Some good friends have a background of science. Some good friends have a background of leadership or media. Each one has a special gift, a special talent, and some have many. But we need all of them. And then together, truly, we can create not just a bridge over troubled waters, but we can reach the other side where there is a world of harmony, of truth, of love. I see that as happening absolutely as a reality, because my hope for the future is because there's goodness in human minds and hearts, and that is what will win the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Jayanti. So we thought it would be nice to, as we're going through the conversation, that you get to share a little bit about what you're thinking and feeling. So if we could just take a minute for you to turn back to your sharing partner, either the same person or a different person, and just for a minute reflect on this question of the spiritual approach to building bridges over troubled water. Where do you sit on this point? Maybe you could share just for 1 minute. Okay. Great to have this as a participative session rather than just sitting and absorbing and listening. This is part of your journey, and the inspiration comes from different directions. So let me just introduce you now to our next dialogue partner. Christian Greiser is an executive coach and advisor, drawing on over 30 years of coaching and strategy consulting. As a management consultant, he is certified with the Worldwide Association of Business Coaches and a fellow of the Institute of Business Coaching. He was managing director and senior partner at the Boston Consulting Group. So what does Christian do? Well, he serves the C-suite executives, where C means chief, the chief of big companies. And he's recognized as a distinguished expert in the leadership development field, where he combines a feeling for people and what matters to people alongside a business perspective, looking into subjects like agile leadership, new ways of working, collective intelligence, and leadership team peak performance. And I've been absolutely fascinated by Christian's book, Remove, Replace, Restart. And just a couple of little one-lines from the book. Listen to your inner voice. In order to transform your organization, you must first transform yourself. Be open to retelling your story and reinventing yourself. Move towards your personal vision. Sounds more like advice for the spiritual path, which is no coincidence because Christian also combines his leadership coaching with a spiritual practice of his own. So a very rich ground for us to be sharing with tonight. So Christian, what are you bringing to the table from this leadership perspective?
Thank you very much, Philippa, for this nice introduction, and thank you, Sister Jayanti. And thank you for the opportunity to share my thoughts on leadership, science, and spirituality during these transformative times, I would say. We all know we are living in an era of intense change. It's as though as we are facing simultaneous waves of ecological, technological, social, and geographical shifts. And Otto Scharmer, a professor at MIT, has described these challenges in terms of three divides: the divide between ourself and nature, the divide between ourself and others, and the divide within ourselves. And to me, true leadership is about bridging these divides. It's about restoring harmony. Harmony with the earth, harmony with each other, and harmony within ourselves. Technology, in particular artificial intelligence, certainly offers remarkable solutions and tools, but it cannot replace what is uniquely human in leadership. And we need leaders that are able to inspire others, that can bring a sense of purpose to people, and that leaders that really care about the aspiration of others. So what does it mean to be a human leader? Martin Luther King once said, life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? And this, to me, is the essence of human leadership. It's not about being in the spotlight. It's about shining your light on others. It's about service. And this is a departure from more conventional definitions of leadership, which are normally rooted in authority, power, and status. Leaders today, facing or confronted with complex challenges, need much more than just strategic thinking or technical expertise. Yes, they need to be rational, logical, and need to be able to forecast, but they must also be empathetic. They must be grounded, and they must be attuned to the more subtle aspects of leadership, such as mindfulness or deep listening, and the ability to tap into higher levels of insight and creativity. Based on my experience, authentic leadership emerges when leaders bring a sense of service, mission, and purpose to their work. And in my experience as a coach working with leaders, there are 3 key levels of leadership mastery: leading yourself, leading others, and leading large-scale change. And to me, the first one, leading yourself, is both, based on my experience, the most difficult and the most important. As the ancient inscription at the Temple of Delphi advised, know thyself. And there are so many leaders around that are striving to truly understand themselves, although they are already in important leadership positions. And it's important to really be self-aware, because without self-awareness, it's impossible to lead others and drive meaningful change. So how can leaders learn to lead themselves? I believe it all starts with reconnecting to your authentic self. It's about self-reflection. It's about cultivating self-awareness, which is the ability to truly understand one's own moods, goals, values, and emotions, and how these influence one's own behavior. So I feel leaders need to create space for self-reflection, and mindfulness and meditation, based on my experience, can be invaluable tools in this respect. When I was still active at BCG, together with a friend, we started a mindfulness initiative at BCG, and that grew from just 2 members. There was 2 of us in the beginning to more than 1,000 during the pandemic. That was maybe the side condition, but we were very proud about that, and that highlights the big interest and the importance of these practices. And the next practice, leading others, is deeply connected to empathy. And research shows that effective leadership hinges on understanding and caring about the feeling of others. But it's also about integrating one's own experiences and emotions, and I feel even spiritual insights into your leadership style. And by doing so, fostering authenticity and trust. And I'll share a brief example. I recently worked for a large professional services firm that was facing high employee turnover, mainly among younger employees. And surprisingly, it wasn't about salary or promotions. The issue was a lack of appreciation for their work. And this highlights how vital it is for leaders to ensure people feel valued. So, last but not least, leading change, particularly at a time when we face complex and systemic problems, requires a shift from thinking you need to know all the answers to learning to ask the right questions. Adaptive challenges like climate change or geopolitical tensions cannot be solved by one person's brilliance alone. Leaders need to draw on collective intelligence, empowering others and motivating them to come up with creative solutions. And this requires a mindset shift. This requires a movement towards what some people call the don't know mind, where leaders open up to new possibilities instead of being fixed on certain solutions. And once again, I feel mindfulness can play an important role here to make this happen and to cultivate this new mindset. I was involved in a study which was later even published by Forbes magazine, where we found that mindfulness programs have the potential to significantly boost a company's collective intelligence. In my work with leaders, I'm increasingly encouraged, I have to say, by the growing number of companies and leaders I see that are awakening to the importance of both people and the planet. And I feel that more and more leaders are willing to take the journey toward human leadership. And they are shifting their focus from me, my, I, me, and mine to we. So this is a big, big shift in focus. And they are shifting their leadership style from classic leading to serving, and I would even say some even to healing. There's a wonderful book out from Jayanti Niklas called Leader as Healer. And all this, I have to say, gives me great optimism for the future. Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I'm sitting here thinking, wouldn't it be fantastic if our political leaders could go to Christian for some leadership coaching and develop this don't know mind? I think that would transform the world overnight. A lot there for us to discuss and think about, but before the panel gets going, maybe just again turn to your partner and see what landed for you, what was significant for you, and what Christian just shared in terms of these new models of leadership, looking at leadership as serving, looking at leadership as asking oneself these deep questions, and change coming from within you as the leader. So maybe just a minute or two looking at this presentation, this contribution from the world of leadership. Okay, I'm sure you could carry on for a while. And there will be a chance for you to ask our panelists questions towards the end of our time together. So if you have got any questions, do be thinking about those. So let me bring into the conversation our third dialogue partner. Professor Dr. Mark Lawrence has a background in atmospheric science. And for 11 years, up until 2022, Mark was the scientific director for the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies, based in Potsdam, here in Germany. And they made scientific studies of what exactly do we mean by sustainability. how do I myself live more sustainably? And does that even make a difference? Important questions. The Institute then merged with another organisation and became the Research Institute for Sustainability, the RIFS, under the umbrella organisation of the Helmholtz Association, also in Potsdam. And they have their Earth and Environment programme. So Mark now continues as joint director of this new organisation, this new institute, and he has co-authored over 180 peer-reviewed papers alongside his personal interest in spirituality. So Mark is always looking for the interface between sustainability, science, and spirituality. And one of Mark's favourite quotes is from Mahatma Gandhi, "Be the change we want to see." So Mark, from the world of sustainability, what do you bring to this conversation?
Well, thank you, Philippa, so much for that kind introduction. And thank you, Caroline and the organizers, for the opportunity to be here tonight. And thank you all for joining us on this very hot day in Berlin, and hopefully an exciting evening with a number of, say, spicy discussions. So as a leader of a research institute for sustainability, indeed a question that I've gotten asked occasionally over the years is, how can I live sustainably? And in pondering over that, a number of main points have crystallized out, and I'd like to talk about 3 of those tonight. So the first of those, this seemingly simple question, how can I live sustainably? It's not so easy, but it has an answer that sounds almost as easy. You can't. That's very worrisome, the director of a Sustainability Institute saying that, but when you think about it in the context of living in a modern societal setting, perhaps you can, under certain settings, such as if you're Thoreau and go off and live in the woods, but in the context of a modern societal setting, activities that you do, such as paying taxes or participating in the economic system by buying things, support activities that are not sustainable, like subsidies for fossil fuels or non-fair trade products. So it's almost impossible to actually live sustainably in the literal sense in our societies. But that doesn't mean we should give up there. We can take the question a step further and say, perhaps I should rephrase it and say, how can I live in support of sustainability? And that actually relates very much to Mahatma Gandhi's quote. We heard from Martin Luther King Jr. before, and now we go back a little further to Mahatma Gandhi. Be the change you want to see in the world, which I find very inspiring. But sometimes, perhaps in our complex modern societies, we need to take that a step further. And in addition to being the change we want to see in the world, we need to be the agents of the change that we want to see in the world. So the second point that is crystallized out is that there are a number of elements to being those kinds of agents. There are many ways that can support us with that, and I've started also a system of characterizing that. Amongst those elements are trying to learn how to align your life with a set of principles, or with sets of principles, that represent sustainability for you. It also includes encouraging others and inspiring others around you to live in ways that are in support of sustainability. And finally, it includes empowering others, not just encouraging them to, but setting the stage for empowering them, enabling them through co-generation of knowledge and through facilitation of transformation processes. That last part is what we do to a large extent at the Research Institute for Sustainability. But I'd like to go back to the first part, these principles for living in support of sustainability, principles that you can align with. And that's the third thing that's crystallized out. In thinking over this over these years, I found that there have been 7 principles of this that have really come to the forefront for me in my context. And it's important to say that for me in my context. As I mentioned before, encouraging others and inspiring others, you can't encourage them or inspire them to be like you because they live in a different context. They have different abilities, they have different interests. But you can encourage others in their context, with their abilities and their interests, to still live in support of what they understand under sustainability. So for me, 7 principles that have crystallized out over these years. You can read more about these, by the way, in a blog article that I wrote at the beginning of last year. There's one page, the opening to that, with a QR code that you can scan to get straight to the article. So I'll just simply name them here, and if there's interest, we can go into some of those in the discussion. The first one is surprising for many, but for me, a very important basis. Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. The second one then becomes much more evident from a sustainability perspective. Be very mindful of your use and application of material, energy, and economic resources. And the third one is very closely related to that, which is be very aware of and very forwards thinking in your use and your application of human resources, your own resources and those of the people around you. The fourth one also kind of makes sense, but many people forget about it. Take very good care of your body, mind, spirit system. That relates to the Sustainable Development Goal number 3 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is good health. The fifth one is one that many people find odd, but I find very important to put at the forefront. Strive for excellence in what you do, but avoiding competing, unless it's in the spirit of play, unless it's in the spirit of mutually enhancing the performance of all, but not competing in the sense of putting yourself up and putting others down, because then you just have a balancing effect. Try to work for synergies. The sixth one is, while doing all of this, strive to do no harm knowingly to other humans and to minimize the harm that you do to all other sentient beings. And the seventh is then really looking forward into what we feel and see as sustainability or a sustainable world. Strive to live as an embodiment of that exalted state that you may believe we would live in if the world really were sustainable, if it were possible to live sustainably. And that includes things like loving kindness, generosity, support, but all of the other states that I mentioned before, of being mindful of your use of resources, of striving for excellence, being cautious in your competition, and avoiding doing harm. And if all of that seems very, very difficult, well, it is, but remember, don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Do what good you can.
I feel like we're getting so many nuggets of wisdom, in a way the crystallization of many years of thinking about these topics that we're all benefiting from in the space of one evening, which is such a great thing for us. So, environment, sustainability science, science in general, is that where you put your faith? Maybe turn to your sharing partner and just take another minute or two just to see what is moving in the waters for you when it comes to science. I notice it's a little bit quieter with science than it was with the others. Okay, thank you so much. Mark presented his 7 principles, a lot there to digest and think about. And we've presented our speakers really as representing these 3 different fields, but in many ways each one of them can represent all 3. You know, each one of our panelists is a leader in their own rights. Each one of them is engaged with science, and certainly sustainability science. Sister Jayanti has been to every COP conference, pretty much everyone, since 2009, so really grappling with the science of environment and climate change. And of course, each one of them is also heavily into a spiritual practice of one kind or another. So it's a lovely bridge-building exercise that is really being demonstrated for us on our platform here this evening. But Mark, I'd like to pick up on something you said which really struck a note with me, and that was your quote from Martin Luther King, "What is it I can do for others?" And I wonder if this is a good place for us to start with, finding a way of building bridges. In other words, making this shift between I, me, my, and what I can do for myself, to what can I do for others? How do I connect with people? How do I make a contribution? So really it's this move from me to we. I wonder if you could say something about that, each of you, from your perspective.
I do believe in the statement that it's in giving that you receive. And it's a tenet that comes through all the different traditions. And I think that what happens is that we get drained. When we're giving, we get drained, we get burnout, and then we say, well, what more can I do? And we give up. And that happens in so many different fields of endeavor at the present time. And I think that if we can find a way to be able to recharge ourselves, then in a very natural way, the energy that comes from above can flow through us and reach others. And that energy can be through thoughts, words, actions of some form or another. And in that awareness of connecting with the one and letting yourself be an instrument and sharing, then also that gets rid of the ego that it's me, that it's I, that I've done something for another. I've just simply been an instrument. But also along the way, I myself am getting recharged. And so it's never a state of burnout. Who met Dadi Janki? Some of you did. A few. She lived to be 104 and passed away in 2020, so fairly recently. But she started giving, well, the stories that I know about her start from childhood, but she came to the Brahma Kumaris in the 30s and was giving right the way through till 2020. And so how can somebody, a human being like you and me, just continually give and give and give? And she would say, it's not me. It's coming from above, and I'm just simply keeping myself as a clear channel so that that energy can flow through. And each one of us can become a channel in that way.
Beautiful. Thank you, Sister Jayanti. Mark, from your perspective, you could say that this is what underpins the environmental crisis, is the desire for personal profit, for consumerism, for acquisition, trying to feather our own nests rather than looking at the collective we and what is it that is going to serve the interests of the whole, of the many, rather than just of myself.
Certainly one can say that. And certainly one can also go back to building on what Sister Jayanti said about burnout for those that do focus on the collective we and that do want to really make a positive change, that often they get into a state where it exhausts them. And that's sometimes related back to what I said before about not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good. There's such a focus on making sure that it's perfectly done, that you're perfectly aligned, perfectly working. Everything that you're wearing and doing is aligned with sustainability. And that caution of not overdoing it, but doing it as far as you can, is very valuable. For me, an example of that, I was just counting through, and 5 of the 6 items that I'm wearing are sustainability oriented in the way that they're produced, fair trade, organic, and so on. One of them isn't. So is that good or not? When it comes down to then this bigger picture of the focus on a common good versus an individual, I see that as one of the elements of the challenges that we have, but it's only one dimension of that. The other dimension that's often forgotten is the time dimension. So the dimension of the closeness and our own profit versus the benefit of a greater good. But the time element also is an important one. Focusing on very short-term profits, I'm sure you encounter this very often in your advisory roles, versus looking into the longer term sustainability of a business, or the longer-term sustainability of a community, or the longer-term sustainability of the earth. And I think it's very important that we look into both of those aspects and not get lost on one dimension or the other.
Thank you. Christian, obviously, someone running a business, they're being paid in order to be successful, and that means entering into a spirit of competition and trying to be better than the others. How do you, in the world of business, enter into this spirit of it's for the good of the lodge, it's for the good of the whole, rather than just for our company?
Yeah, thank you. I think it depends a bit on the perspective which you have on competition. Competition as a word comes across or can come across very aggressive. But you can have different perspectives on this. It could also be understood in terms of creating a balance. Competition can also be good to hold up a mirror and to show you where you are and where you should go and where you shouldn't go. And competition can also have a big importance or can play a big role in understanding how I can do better. If I would be the only company in the world and there would be no other company, it would be very hard for me to understand how I could do better. But if I see other companies that are moving in the direction which I aspire to go to as well, that's something maybe I can learn from. But to your point, of course, competition also can have a very dark and negative side. If it's in the end only for what you just mentioned, short-term results and just trying to create profit at the sake of anything. That, of course, is something which comes back to leadership, I feel. This is the question, and to what Sister Jayanti said in the very beginning, which values do you bring to your business? What is it where do you take your leadership perspective from? And I think if your leadership and if your culture of the company is grounded in the right values, I think you can deal with competition in the right way.
You were saying that people were leaving a certain company and it boiled down to the fact that they weren't being appreciated enough for what they were doing. And I know that for many young people as well, their work is not just about earning money. It's about having a job that feels like it's worthwhile, that it's making a difference somehow. And that would seem to indicate that we're entering an era where values are what is going to drive our way forward and build a bridge from where we are to where we're going. What role do you see values playing, Sister Jayanti?
If I think about civilization as a whole, in terms of history, when there's a group of people who hold values in high esteem and strive to follow those values in their lives, then you have a world in which the arts can flourish, new discoveries are made, and there are many advances that happen. And where values have been forgotten, and it's selfish motives that drives the civilization, that civilization heads to a collapse. Where do you think we are at today? And so I think that because we've seen the result of the lack of values, we're now beginning to appreciate why we need to come back to values again. And so I do see that people are becoming aware of this, and so there's a growing movement and high energy being given in this direction of human values and spiritual values once more. And I think that is the way that a better world can be created, a civilization in which we are working from the values that lie in the core of our being and not external things.
And what are the intrinsic values, would you say, of the individual soul of each of us?
For me, like you have the 4 basic colors, and when you mix and match those colors, you get the whole rainbow. In the same way, the original intrinsic qualities of every human soul are peace, love, wisdom, purity, and joy. And when you mix all these qualities in different percentages and different forms, you get the spectrum of all the different values of compassion, of kindness, of integrity, of honesty, etc., etc., etc. So this is why I feel that coming back to the inner self, the inner being, the soul, if I can come to that realization that that is who I am, then I'm not struggling to follow values in my life. I know that I have them, which is very different. And you then use those values in the way in which you live your life.
Mark, for many people in the environmental field, they would say that they are promoting positive values of nurturing and caring for the environment, of protecting and conserving. And yet very often they get knocked back by society for being problematic and, poking the bear. And so the message can come, it doesn't pay to have these values because you're not going to be rewarded for them by society.
It's an absolutely serious challenge that we face. Whether or not people feel the reward, the recognition, is what you were talking about already in the one company that you were working with, is that sometimes that can be more important than the comfort through money and security, is just simply the recognition and the anti-recognition for what is done. The problematic pushing back. On the other hand, then we do have to ask, is the trigger a trigger, or is the action one that is being effective? And sometimes an action that really scratches and gets attention can be very effective if it's not causing substantial harm. And sometimes it can go over boundaries. And that's where we need open debates in society, deciding what is within realms of what's acceptable and what's over boundaries is different for each person that's involved. I think, though, for many people, this sense of doing something good for the environment, and I'll come back to the for the environment part, is something that is so intrinsic that it doesn't matter as much as it does in the choice of a workplace, how recognized they are or how negatively recognized they are for it. And in fact, perhaps the negative recognition can even be a positive sense of we've gotten attention, or we've put, and not on us, but because the names of the individual people are typically not what they're trying to put in the forefront. We have brought attention to this issue. And that is so strongly in the forefront of the values and putting that out there that the recognition issue isn't perhaps as important as it is in other settings. The last part, for the environment. We talk a lot about that of saving the climate or of saving the environment. And I think most of the people that are involved in these activities aren't really trying to do this for the climate. They really have the deeper at heart interest in doing this for humanity. It's not that we're out there trying to save the climate from humans. The climate is a mathematical average of the weather over a 30 or more year period. It's interested in what humans are doing, it responds to it, and so on, but it flows like water. It responds to what humans do. But humans have a very difficult time responding to how climate is changing. So we're not saving the climate from humans. We're trying to save humans from climate change. We're trying to save humans from environmental degradation in all sorts of different forms, be it pollution in the air and water and soils, be it our over deforestation and the loss of biodiversity and so on. There's a care for the environment itself in many people and a care for non-human sentient beings, but there's also a care for humans and for making sure that we're protecting ourselves. And so I think that's where it comes back around to the values, and that is fascinating, I'll say, to look at from a social science, humanities perspective and understand how that links to our growing understanding of the natural sciences.
Great, thank you. So Christian, this need to build a bridge from the climate change activists and those whose bottom line is potentially going to be affected by the changes and measures being suggested. Where are we at in terms of bridge building between your community and this community?
If I knew the answer. Thank you for asking that. That's indeed a tricky one. I don't know where we are. I feel that, you see, when I talk about the companies I work with, you see more and more, I would say it started with awareness, but now you see more and more action to describe this part. And I think it has different facets. It is not just, let's say, the ethical aspect and the values. My feeling is it is now also something companies are being seen from the outside. If you look at the CEO agendas these days, of course, there is the geopolitical things and everything, but there is, of course, also climate. But there is another big topic on the agenda, and that is talent. That these companies need, or they fight for people, not in the aggressive sense, but they are looking for the next generation to join this company. And this generation has a very distinct perspective on what this company is doing. And a lot of companies now suddenly see they are not able to win this talent simply because they represent the wrong values or they don't care for these topics. Now, this might sound a bit, how shall I say, materialistic or profit-oriented, but whatever it is, it has an impact on these companies. So that's also something I see in my work, and that doesn't stop, I think, with climate, that there's also this notion of human sustainability. So do we provide working environments where humans can work sustainable? Is it something where we look at work-life balance and all these things? Everything comes now up at big companies and is more and more taken serious. And this is something where I feel the bridge is being started to being built. And of course, some companies are moving faster than others. But there is a clear impact you see. Yeah.
It's interesting to ask to what extent are these companies just greenwashing and looking after their employees and offering, subscription to, online support for meditation and stress because that will attract people, or are they genuinely trying to make a difference? I won't ask you to answer that question, but I'm just pondering it. And Sister Jayanti, from the spiritual perspective, the shift in consciousness, that actually we're all in this together. There's no point this group of people over here thriving if these people are being pushed down, because ultimately it's all one. How does a shift in consciousness potentially bring about the change that we're looking for?
There's a very simple analogy. If we sit in a boat and it's one boat that's carrying the whole of humanity and the water starts leaking at one end of the boat, what happens to the rest of the boat? And so I think people are beginning to see how our carbon footprint and whatever it is we're doing in one part of the world, at the moment, the visible signs in a very tragic way are happening in another part of the world, but we're beginning to see the signs of things happening here also. But that's one side of it. The positive side of all of this is that when I started the first Raj Yoga Center in London in 1971, so 50 plus years ago, people thought that just by then the scene had started to open up to Hatha Yoga. And so people would phone and say, I'd like to come. When can I come? We'd fix a time and then say, what clothes shall I wear? Shall I bring my mat? And I'd explain to them, I'm talking about spiritual yoga, meditation. That's how strange it was. People did not know about Raj Yoga at all. The word meditation had just started to come into our language, even though it's a very ancient word, but it had been forgotten and now was just beginning to come in. And today, meditation is fashionable. People like to say, oh, I meditate, you know, and so I've seen this big shift happen in consciousness already. And where vegetarian diet, at school I got lettuce and boiled potato for my lunch. Today, at schools and hospitals, you're provided with a beautiful vegetarian meal. And so if these institutions in our world are changing to that extent, it gives you an idea of how much change has happened in a positive direction in terms of consciousness. And so if we can change this far within the space of just some years, smoking used to be a menace everywhere. And today, it isn't. We regard smoking as dangerous today. Even passive smoking is highly dangerous. And laws have been made to be able to take us away from that. It happened so quickly. And so I think that consciousness has been changing in a beautiful way. And I think there's a little bit further to go, but I think it'll happen quite fast.
So we're talking now about theories of change, and I wonder if there is a need for troubled waters in order for bridges to be built. In other words, you sometimes need a crisis in order to rise up above and find a challenge, find a solution. I've heard it said that people predict there's going to be more change in the next 5 years than there has been in the last 30 years. We're looking at rapid change happening within us as individuals, within society, within finance and banking. Everything is set for major change. And yet we as humans can only cope with so much change at a time. And there is evidence to suggest that we're not coping at all well. In the UK, we have just this week launched a new emergency service. When you ring up to call for an ambulance, they now say, is it a physical or is it a mental health emergency? It's now been recognised, the need for a response to mental health emergencies. In the UK, a young person or child is referred to the mental health services every 3 minutes. That's 400 children a week being referred, and that's double what it was before the pandemic. The cracks are beginning to appear. How are we going to navigate these next few years? How are we going to build in resilience? And how do we bring about change, but in a way that we can all cope with? Mark?
Transdisciplinary research. A little more seriously, though, that these new developments in the way that we go about trying to facilitate interactions between different components of society, and especially between different knowledge holders and knowledge generators, is a very important aspect of that. I'll come back to that in a moment. As Sister Jayanti was speaking, I was also thinking about this rate of change and thinking, goodness, you remember probably not even 10 years ago at the Paris Climate Conference and the ones before that, how difficult it was to get a vegetarian, let alone a vegan, meal there. And at the last two, amazingly, where you wouldn't really expect it, in Egypt and Dubai, every other stand, left and right, had some kind of nice bowls or some kind of nice sandwiches, vegan sandwiches, and so on. That it's become fashionable, and it has changed very quickly. And there are many other things that have changed really, really quickly. And there's a little bit of a danger in that we start to think, oh, well, all of these things can change so quickly, so we can change anything really quickly. And there are some elements of society, especially behavior-oriented ones, that can and do change quickly. But we have businesses that have investments. They invest in a power plant, or they invest in the tooling for aircraft, or for building ships, or for other things. These are 30, 40, 50-year investments that they have made. Changes there don't happen easily, quickly. And so we also need to be very aware of, with all the confidence and all the hope that we sprout from these rapid changes that we do see in behaviors, the systems changes can take a lot longer to come about. Coming back around to your issue of the mental versus the physical side of things, that is an aspect of our society that we really start to see, that we bring so many things into our society that are meant to be basically good for us. Cell phones is one of the most recent ones that are supposed to ease our communication with others, but computers, laptops, iPads, even watches, wristwatches, all of these things that are supposed to make things easier on us, and we end up noting the stress from those. And it's not that these things stress us themselves. I don't wear a wristwatch. It goes in my pocket. I learned that sadly from a colleague of mine who had a heart attack, and one of the things that his doctor told him to prevent a second heart attack is put away his watch and stop being so tied up with the time and so on, and take a step back from that. It's not the technologies themselves, though. Of course, it's our use of these technologies. And how do we go about improving our use of those technologies? And that comes back to the first part that I was talking about, that we've become so focused in our Western society on science generates knowledge and speaks to policy and tells policy what to do with that. And science generates solutions and tells policymakers how to work with those solutions. Science doesn't generate solutions. It generates knowledge about how actions are connected with consequences. That knowledge then can be used together with values and norms to propose solutions. But if we only stop there, then we only have a small part of the picture. We have all sorts of other forms of knowledge. We have spiritual knowledge. We have political knowledge. We have indigenous knowledge. We have investigative knowledge, journalistic knowledge, and so on. And so this comes back around to what I said at the beginning, transdisciplinary research. The idea behind that crazy, long, difficult word is to bring together all these various forms of knowledge into the research process. We don't make science wishy-washy. We keep the scientific method and the scientific approach rigorous, but we bring other elements of knowledge into it. And I think that in terms of making this shift that you talked about, a very important aspect of that is going to be respecting the knowledge and the capacities that others bring in, and not just our own walk of life. Not only spiritual solutions, not only business solutions, not only science solutions, but joint solutions.
Yeah, Sister Jayanti, before Jayanti adds a point here, just to say we are going to be coming to you for your questions of the panel in a moment. So do be having a think if you have any questions for any of our panelists. And if you're listening and watching online, then do please write in your questions in the chat box or the way in which you can message us here. And there's an ingenious way by which your question will appear on my phone, so I can ask your question for you. So please do send in your questions. Sister Jayanti.
I just wanted to bring in another aspect about the situation of uncertainty that we're in. Change means you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day or the next year. But if I can spend a little bit of time each morning, each day, just going deep inside myself and strengthening my own foundation of goodness, of faith, of respect for myself, respect for others, the stability that this brings me is then not just for those 10, 15, 20 minutes that I'd spend doing that. It's creating a very solid, firm foundation in which, as I come out of that space and I'm facing all the uncertainties, I'm doing it from a very stable form within my own self. And so really there is something we can each do in a very simple way. And I know that it works. I know that the things that I'm dealing with, I wouldn't have been able to deal with some years ago. But it's a consistency of practice. And when I keep practicing this awareness of going inside and connecting above, then this gives that strength and inner power. And the second thing, connected very much with this, is the whole subject of decision-making. We live in a world in which we have too much choice. A long time ago, a psychiatrist said that one of the factors of stress in the world is that we have too much choice and not enough wisdom with which to make our choice. And I think that's fairly true. And the choices open up even more and more as each day goes by. And I think that this attention within, focusing my mind on aspects of truth, on aspects of the eternal being, the connection above, all of these things bring a great clarity, so that then I can see not just what my choices are, but what the consequences of those choices would be. And so decision-making is enhanced in a very powerful way. I'm listening to the voice of my own conscience, my own intuition, and maybe even signals from above. And that means that I move ahead with a certain assurance and confidence and faith, which I need so much in these present times.
Each of you has got your own practice. Sister Jayanti has just talked about her practice, and I know each of you are very disciplined in what you do. But I'm quite intrigued, Mark, to hear you talk about a genuine interest in meditation in the boardroom, at the level of the CEO and these people who are running organizations. Can you give us a little insight into, without giving away any secrets, what is the interest, and how are they adopting this and taking this up?
I think I might share in a little story, an experience where I had this. I was, so the background of the story is I had my meditation practice, I was working in my business, and that was two separate lives. And a colleague of mine convinced me and said we should write an article about mindfulness in business. And I thought it's a bad idea. I thought, no, that's two different topics. But then eventually we decided to write this article, which got a lot of response, and I got a lot of questions and mails. And then I was invited to a company that said, we want to learn more about mindfulness in business. Can you tell us? So I was going to this company, and I was prepared to do what I'm doing today, to sit on stage and talk a bit about mindfulness. And then shortly before I started this exercise, the client told me, by the way, you're not doing this presentation alone. He is another consultant, and she is a mindfulness trainer. She is doing the presentation together with you. And she told me, oh, that's wonderful. You do the presentation, I do the meditation. And I thought, you're doing what? There are 60 managers and we are doing a live meditation. And she said, yes, that's what we are going to do. So I was a bit afraid, and I thought I didn't know what's going to happen. And then all these big ego managers sitting there, she said, I have a very simple task. For the next 1 minute, you think about nothing. You only observe your breathing. It's very, very simple, and you are all very smart and intelligent. Could you please do that? And then we were sitting there for 1 minute, and after the minute she said, all those that were not able simply to focus on their breathing and not think about anything, please raise your arm. And all arms went up. And then she said, oh, I'm a bit disappointed. I thought you're very smart. Maybe I didn't explain the exercise correctly. You shouldn't think about anything. So this was the first moment they realized all this traffic going on in your mind. And when we left the room, we asked these people, there were 60 participants, we asked who would be interested in participating in a mindfulness program, and I think there were 56 people who said yes. Because it's this very, very short experience that you suddenly realize you think you have control over so many things, but then you realize you don't even have control over your mind. How can you believe you have control over other things? And this is a very simple exercise, but I felt it was very powerful. Apart from that, I've seen many mindfulness programs in companies. We need to be a bit careful because you also address this aspect of greenwashing. Then they introduce headspace and they are just doing it for being en vogue and trying to win people. And I think the impact is limited. But what I would say is, where I saw, and I briefly mentioned it in the beginning, very often we learn about mindfulness in companies only because in connection with burnout. I think on the positive side, there's also opportunities because it can increase collective intelligence. That's what we did in a study where we could show that collective intelligence increases by 13% if you run these mindfulness programs. It's also something which you can do wonderful in connection with working on psychological safety. So there's a lot of things what you can do where you can, I think, improve the work environment. But of course, it needs to be done in a professional way. But that, I think, the impact is there. The first big wave, I would say, is over. Some companies are turning a bit skeptical, but I believe that's something which will be permanently part of companies' well-being or corporate culture.
I imagine it will get to a point where companies, individuals, organizations simply won't be able to get through what they're doing without some support in this direction. And maybe there's a business opportunity here for doing meditation sessions in boardrooms of the top companies around the world. Float that one out there for what it's worth. So I think we do have a roving mic somewhere in the room. So if you have a question that you would like to ask, please just raise your hand and the microphone will come to you. And I am getting questions coming through on my phone, so I can put those questions, but it'd be nice to start with a question from the room. Yeah, we've got someone here at the front. Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Christine Hansen. Thank you very much to all of you speakers. Very inspiring, very connecting. So the bridges are definitely starting to build, I'm sure, within all of us. I have something to ask or maybe also share, especially with something that you said, Mr. Greiser, in the beginning. You were mentioning that, for one, it is important when you want to change a company, you want to change a business, or you're building a business, you have to change yourself, you have to change your own ways as the basis of that. And then also you've been saying, and I'm sure this is something all of us feel, that it's so important to stay very connected with ourselves and stay authentic. And that's like the other base of it. But for me, it's a versus. I'm feeling a very strong discrepancy here. So I would like it if you could, share your thoughts and evaluate on this and try to help me.
Thank you for your question.
So hopefully I understand that correctly. You feel a bit of a discrepancy between staying authentic on one side, on the other side, changing yourself. Is it that what you're saying? And that's what in literature is addressed as the authenticity paradox. And there's a big discussion. Are you still authentic when you change that? I think it depends on how you define your authenticity. If you define your authenticity based on outer factors, like how you are living, what are you doing, that's maybe a limited view. But if you say your really authentic self is your values, what we discussed before, what is deep inside you, you can do a lot of changes in your life. You can even open a new chapter and you're still authentic. Although some of your friends around you might say, you look different, you're doing something different, but you are still true to yourself. And by the way, as a coach, when I work with clients, understanding your own values is not easy. Most of the clients that come to me, they have no clue what their values are. You feel your values typically in critical situations, like then how you react. This is typically a hint of what your values are. But typically what we do in these coaching sessions is the first exercise, trying to understand what are your values, what is important for you, what do you really expect for life, and what is it that you want to contribute. And then, based on that, I think there is change possible. And this is change with this fixed part inside you. And it is more, I would say, a discovery process where you discover more values of yourself. Does it answer your question? Yeah. No.
The values hopefully change you. Yeah. Just here at the front, thank you.
Hello. My question is about, like, in today's world, like you spoke about being grounded. And at the core of, I think, being human is also being open. How do we, from a bottom-up level, cultivate a culture of humility and openness to have these sort of discussions where it's just not about being in a rat race, but about empathy, about feelings from, especially when you want to influence this within an organization. But it has to be, again, if it's not coming from top down, and if you want to do from bottom up, how do you talk about or encourage the culture of humility and modesty in people, so that you can. This is to all of you, actually, and maybe especially to Kristen as well, because it's about groundedness and even spirituality, to Sister Jayanti, because it's about modesty.
In a way, it's a question about emotional intelligence, being able to recognize and articulate what you're feeling. And does that change happen from the bottom up, or can it come from the top down? Humility in particular.
So I'm not sure there is the solution, and I give you now the formula, and tomorrow the world will be wonderful. I think it's a big challenge, it's a big topic. But my feeling is, it is a bit like what Sister Jayanti described before, something you do for yourself. I talked about leadership, and there's maybe something leaders can do. And then it's something which is happening step by step. My feeling is it has a lot to do with role modeling. If I see people displaying this behavior, being empathetic, being grounded, being attuned to others, being open to others, I might be inspired to do the same. Unfortunately, what you often see is that people talk about that, but not acting in that way. And that is a big challenge. I think there is this notion from, I don't know, one wise master once said that those who know don't talk, and those that talk don't know. I think in this perspective, it also fits, although it was said in a different perspective, on different context. I think it's you shouldn't talk about that. You should just do it. Be empathetic. That simply means having time to reach out, etc. I often see when I work with individuals, when I work with leaders, then there is this willingness to be more empathetic, but then they tell me, I don't know when to do this. Look at my calendar. And this shows this shows the fundamental problem. Empathy is nothing you do Friday afternoon after 3 o'clock. Empathy is something that doesn't take much time. It might just take a few seconds. It can just be looking at someone, asking a question, smiling, or reacting to someone. But this is where it starts. I think it's role modeling. It's my perspective.
I'll just add that there are ways, go ahead. There are ways being established of facilitating appreciative discussions as well, so that help to really form a basis for this. So there's one form called appreciative inquiry, or there are others where you have a more silent communication, or where you have people sitting and allowing and pulling out the perspectives from others. There are other forms like the seventh generation and so on that are set up to actually help us to bring out that degree of respect in discussions. And interestingly, what we're doing here, this kind of a panel discussion, this is what we observe at the climate conferences. So the vast majority of the side events are a panel discussion like this. Typically a little bit more white male than this is, and typically a little bit more focused on themselves, and very often with those panelists looking at their emails while the others are discussing. I don't think that happened this evening. But we've done experiments at these climate conferences of setting up different types of discussion formats and seeing how they're received in the context of a climate conference, and what people think about the communication at the conferences, and how that can change in the communicative atmosphere could actually lead to potentially different results at these conferences. And so if you're interested in that, we've written up some about that. Caroline, one of the organizers, was our point person on doing this, and did a beautiful job of writing up some of that, so that there really is some scientific, peer-reviewed scientific journal results showing what the perspective on this is of using these types of formats. So maybe that's also helpful to you.
Another ray of hope is that some years ago, Harvard ran a summer school in which they were experimenting with different things, and I won't go into the detail, long story, but the outcome was that they found that one act of kindness impacted 125 others. And so if I start with empathy, with humility, who knows who's seeing and watching and has benefited, but they will carry that further and further. And so do something good, and you don't need to wait to see the results, but it's having an impact on 125 others.
There's one more question here.
Okay. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm very grateful that I can listen to you. It was very, very rich. And I have one question that I struggle sometimes with, and I think I have it to Sister Jayanti, but I would also be interested in what the others have to say. And I just wonder, like, when I hear you, I feel like it sounds like a lot of wisdom that just flows through you. And then I just also hear that you go to many conferences where there's a lot of knowledge and science, and I wonder, how do you balance it? Like, when do you just think, now just my wisdom should be talking, and when do you add the scientific knowledge?
I find that opportunities come, and if you're open, then you just soak in those opportunities and benefit from whatever is going on. But one of the most important things I've learned over the years is give yourself the space of the morning hours, especially the early morning hours when the world is quiet and even your family is quiet. Keep those for yourself and just fill yourself with whatever you can through that period. And the rest of the day, you'll see where the opportunities are and what it is you need to do.
Thank you. And let's just have a quick question from our online community. For you, Mark, isn't it a barrier that the topic of sustainability often comes across as accusatory to many people? You're not doing enough, you should be doing this. And however much you do, are you ever really satisfied? Is it ever really enough?
Absolutely. It's a major challenge that we face in the narratives and the discussions around it. In German, there's the term Ökodiktatur, so ecological dictatorship. It's a massive problem that those who feel like they are being disadvantaged by developments in what's associated with a sustainability agenda, so typically those who are focused on some type of short-term profit, on their own benefit, and they feel like they're being disadvantaged by it, or those who lead traditional lives in many ways, and for instance would have a life living on a farm where meat is a part of the life, and then they feel like there are these people that they don't understand coming, trying to take their traditional way of life away from them. Of course they'll fight back. And of course they'll come up with ways of making sustainability sound like it's something that is involved in taking away. And that basically increases the challenge that we have of trying to make it clear with counter-narratives that sustainability is really about getting something and giving something. It's about getting a stability. It's about getting a healthier, a more wholesome, a more secure way of living. And yes, we may give up on some things, but if we keep those things, we're giving up on other things. And so it's difficult to bring that across well. And this comes back around to what I was saying before and your question of how can we have respectful ways of interacting with each other, and really bringing it down to respectful interactions so that we can understand where is that pushback coming from, and how can we respectfully work together to bring about change that is oriented on the common good, but that's also respectful of the changes and the challenges that represents for each person within the larger common good picture.
Very lovely. Well, we have been talking a little bit about meditation, and in a moment we're going to experience a moment of shared meditation, which would be really lovely. But Mark, you mentioned in your book one point, which is work towards your vision. And I'd like to kind of bring our conversation to a close by asking each of you, what is your personal vision of this new story for humanity? What does the other side, the far side of the bridge look like for you?
You want, so I haven't written a book, but I think Christian's written several. You might have met him first. Exactly. Why don't you start?
To me, very simple. It has to do with collectiveness, the vision I have, because that's what I also said in the introduction and the beginning. These problems around us, we can't solve individually. It is our problems. We have to our problems and our opportunities. It's not only negative. And what I hope and what I would like to see is a different way of working together, of coming together, of understanding each other. That's my vision.
So for me, the vision, of course, has a lot to do with sustainability, and and it's, for me, it's important also to consider what I feel under sustainability. And we have a definition that we orient on as a guiding concept for fostering and securing humane living conditions for all people worldwide, now and in the future, and for restoring and protecting the environmental foundations that are needed in order to provide those conditions. And so my vision is a world in which this viewpoint of sustainability is actually at the forefront. That in a way that is not taking people down and demoralizing them and taking things away, but in a way that's providing a rich life to people around the world. And that vision, of course, is what drives all of the individual work of understanding how actions are connected together with the consequences, and how we can develop pathways forward for setting up a world in which we can actually come to this view of living in a way that is rich, in a way that is enjoyable, in a way that is healthy, in a way that is secure, and in a way that is sharing and supporting common good. And in a way that most scientists don't take as a word, in a way that's loving. And we've had one of our master's students write a master's thesis on love in the Anthropocene, trying to understand this. So love can be looked at from a scientific perspective as well. And so my vision is a world that heads in this direction.
A vision of love. Beautiful. Sister Jayanti, what does the far side of the bridge look like for you?
I'm convinced that the goodness of humanity will be what wins. And so when human beings are in touch with themselves and they allow their own original intrinsic qualities to emerge within themselves and express them in terms of their activity, their behavior, their relationships, not only with each other but also with all forms of life and nature itself, I think what we then see is a world of perfect harmony. And I don't think it's a dream or even just a vision. I think that we are moving in that direction and it'll become a reality.
Ending on a note of real hope and optimism, which, let's face it, we all need in today's world. Hasn't it been interesting how our three panelists, although at the surface representing different spheres, actually you scratch the surface and it's all the same. And this idea of working together, of it's not one organization, not one individual, not any one thing can bring about this solution. It's together. It's all of us realizing our joint potential and moving towards that. So a round of applause, please, for our panelists. Haven't they been very generous? So let's move now into our final meditation. We've talked a lot about the power of the mind to bring about change. So let's experience this sense of becoming a friend of our mind and turning within. And I'd like to ask Sister Jayanti to just guide us with her thoughts as we have this time together.
I would suggest that you sit with both feet on the ground so that the body is comfortable and balanced, and just sit as you are, naturally, comfortably. You can keep your eyes open and just look straight ahead, or you can keep your eyes closed, and there's value in both. I reflect on the things I've been hearing about. I reflect on the being that I am, the inner being, a being filled with goodness, a being filled with truth, a being of light. And in this awareness of the inner being, I watch my thoughts. My thoughts have slowed down, not scattered as they were earlier. And I bring my thoughts to a focus, to a point of light in the center of the forehead. focusing here, and concentrating on one thought, the thought of peace. I can go deeper and deeper within myself and find that space within where only I can enter, a sacred space, a space of stillness, of calm. And in this awareness of peace, it feels comfortable and very familiar. This is how I used to be. Peaceful and powerful. I come back to this state of awareness that I am a being of peace. And I realize that each and every human being is also the same. Each one is a being of peace. Aware of this, it is as if you're threaded together as one family. I hold this vision of seeing each one filled with goodness, filled with light, one family striving for the best for all. And these vibrations of peace reach out to all forms of life. And as they experience the power of peace reaching them, they too feel the comfort and safety of peace. A place where no violence can touch anyone, just harmony and peace. And the power of peace reaches out to nature and all aspects of nature. The earth, the water, the fire, air, and ether. And the power of peace calms the elements so that humans and nature begin to work in harmony together. The vibrations of peace restores harmony to the entire planet and all within it. And the power of peace brings balance. And the earth returns to a state of balance once again. The power of peace is able to achieve this. I hold a vision of humans with love and respect, caring and supporting each other, sharing compassion and kindness with all forms of life. Souls filled with gratitude for all that nature has done for us already. And feelings of respect for nature itself, and resolving to work in harmony with nature. I keep this vision of a beautiful world. And as I come back into the awareness of the moment here and now, I resolve to hold this vision of my own light and the light of each one, so that it guides my thoughts, my words, and my actions. Om Shanti.
Thank you very much, Sister Jayanti. Thank you, Mark Lawrence. Thank you, Christian Greiser. And thanks to all of you as well for coming and adding your energy to this beautiful event. It's been very special. And I hope you've taken something of inspiration that you can carry away with you. And if that is the case, we would love to capture your thoughts and inspirations after hearing everything this evening. And we're going to have a little camera and microphone set up at the back of the hall here. So if you'd like to come and share with us what you would like to remember from this evening, then do please come and find us. You'll also find at the back of the hall there is some literature, some books that have been mentioned this evening. Mark's blog article and Christian's book, you can have a look at it there, and some of the Brahmakumaris books. And there's also refreshments there if you'd like to have a quick drink of something before you leave. And just as you do go, we're going to just hear a little bit about another event that is being planned in the near future from the Brahmakumaris here in Berlin. And Almut is here to tell us about that.
Erstmal ganz herzlichen Dank, dass Sie hier sind, dass wir den Abend hearty thank that you're all here and that we are able to join this wonderful evening. And we heartily invite you to 2 follow-up programs. That is on Saturday, 7th of September. It's a workshop, Keep Cool, to be able to regulate emotions. And then on Sunday, to know the self, to learn to love the self and to love others. That is on Sunday, on the 8th of September. We invited Nancy Fröhling from Netherlands. She's also a consultant like you. So she will be here with us. You will find details back on the writing table. One will be at 6 p.m. and the other will be at 4 p.m. So heartily welcome to visit our center. We are in Sigmaringer Straße in Wilmersdorf. Hearty welcome. Yes, and please feel free. We prepared something, some sweet and also a positive thought for everyone. And Sister Jayanti, you will give these tolis and blessings. Yes, please come ahead and take this as a little gift from us. And as Philippa always said, we have something to drink over there and also little literature, 2 books from Sister Jayanti we have there. So yeah, please feel free to come.
So thanks again from me, from all of us here to all of you. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Keep thinking about what difference each of us can make as you move forwards in your lives, and we look forward to maybe being together again one day soon. Good night. Om Shanti.